Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, here on this fantastic Monday afternoon. And it's amazing because not only do we have basketball news to cover, but the Giants won a football game. Yeah, let's go. So, for all of you guys who are interested in football, we have so many football podcasts. We have a sports podcast coming up that is also going to talk about football. TJ is the host of that sports podcast. There's a football podcast that happens right before my podcast. I believe it starts at 10:30, and we have a fantasy football podcast, a chip shot football podcast, so many podcasts about football, a college football podcast. So anytime you want an update on what's going on in football, I recommend tuning into those podcasts and listening to what everyone has to say. All right, I'm going to stop wearing this hat. Okay. So, on to basketball and on to the big news of basketball. Oh my goodness, my hair is all over the place. But anyways, so the WNBA Playoffs happened over the weekend. And I'm sure none of you guys knew about that. And also, the WNBA Awards were handed out over the weekend. And I'm sure you guys didn't know about that either. So, we are going to talk about those things. We'll talk about the awards first in the first segment, and then in the second segment we will cover the WNBA playoffs and every single matchup that happened there. And then in the third segment we're going to look at the rest of the award winners, because it's not just MVP and it's not just Rookie of the Year that are the awards in the WNBA. There are other awards that the WNBA has, and we're going to be talking a little bit about all of them. And then in the fourth segment, we're going to be shifting our focus back to the NBA and talking about Jayson Tatum and some comments that a lot of people really like to make fun of, because apparently he claims that he knew his team would win in the finals. And I'm kind of curious as to why he knew that and how he knew that, because I didn't look at it before. It was 13 hours ago, but I opened up my phone and I just looked at the article and I'm like, that's interesting. I wonder how Jayson Tatum knew all along that he would win. And then we also have a special fifth segment at the end of the fourth segment that I like to reveal. So be sure to stay tuned at the end all the way if you guys are interested to figure out what that fifth segment actually is. And before I begin, I do like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether you guys have a hot take, a burning question, something you've been dying to say. We are all ears. And if you really want your comment or question to get noticed, then you can go ahead and use Super Chat. Just click on the $ below the chat box, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way, and it's guaranteed to get featured on the show. If Super Chat isn't really your thing, that's totally fine. You can always use the link displayed below the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net. Send in your comments and or donations that way. Either or really helps the show, makes it way more interactive between myself and you guys. And with that out of the way, let's go ahead and continue on with this first segment, which is going to be talking about Caitlin Clark and A'ja Wilson. So first we're going to start with A'ja, because I feel like the back-to-back unanimous MVP award winner is something that's worth talking about. Yes, this isn't the first time that she's won. Actually, yes, this isn't the first time that she's won the MVP award, and it's not the first time that she's won the MVP award unanimously. She is fantastic. She's an amazing athlete. She is the best player that the WNBA has, right next to Caitlin Clark, in my opinion. And I mean, she won the MVP. This makes it her third MVP, I believe. And again, it's just multiple unanimous MVP awards on your resume. You really have to be an elite and unstoppable force in the WNBA, because I mean, let's face it, she can do everything on the basketball court. I mean, you see that jersey back there, LeBron James, put that up there, thanks Mom. That's basically her. That is essentially her. She can do everything on the court. She can rebound the ball. She can facilitate just fine. She can score the ball exceptionally well against anybody that is on her. She uses her size to her advantage and her height to her advantage as well. She is a phenomenal athlete, and it makes complete sense why she was the MVP award winner unanimously. I'm very, very sure that she's not going to, or at least it's going to be a bit of a competition to win this award in the future because of this young rookie right here. And who would have guessed it? Caitlin Clark, the Rookie of the Year. And I said from the beginning she was going to win the Rookie of the Year, but Once Angel Reese went down, the question became whether or not she was going to win Rookie of the Year unanimously. And turns out that's exactly what she did. So I called it. Just throwing it out there, guys. I called it. You can go ahead and look at the previous podcast before. I've said it from the beginning. That she was going to win the Rookie of the Year. And then once Angel went down, I said she should win it unanimously. There should be no questions about it, but wouldn't be surprised if there was anybody in the WNBA that wanted to sway the vote in somebody else's favor because of how the WNBA, and some of the WNBA athletes don't really like her. But that's a completely different story. And again, these awards, like, obviously, the two players, these two were the most popular award winners because it seems that these two tend to be the only WNBA players that can actually gain a lot of media attention, especially Caitlyn. I mean, everybody knew that Caitlyn won the WNBA MVP unanimously. Everybody knew that. But the MVP award wasn't, WNBA fans knew that A'ja was going to win it unanimously, but not everybody really knew that. Like, a lot of people really thought that Caitlyn was going to win the MVP award as well. And while I do understand the argument for Caitlyn winning the MVP, because she did lead the Fever to their first ever playoff series in the last 8 years. I almost said 3. And she turned the franchise around. Yes, I totally understand that, and that is MVP. That does signify value, and that does imply that you have immense value to the team, not to mention breaking the single season record for assists, breaking the rookie record for assists, breaking the rookie record in three-pointers. You guys, all the awards that Caitlin Clark has won, and all the accolades and all the records she's broken, it's like, the record breaking, it's really like, how do you not put her as the MVP? And I have two things for you. Team record and averages. Because A'ja has much better averages. And yes, A'ja doesn't really have record-setting games, sure, but she did score 1,000 points. And this was the first time that any WNBA athlete has ever had a season scoring 1,000 points. And all the other awards and all the other records that Caitlyn has broken, yes, those are very impressive. But I mean, 1,000 points is something that we might not see. Or at least that's what the NBA would like you to believe, because honestly, I think Caitlyn is going to break that record in the near future, but she's not there yet, which is something that people and voters don't seem to understand. Yes, she is already playing at a WNBA caliber level. Yes, she has already made it. But we still need some time. Like, I do understand the logic of waiting, and not only that, just honoring this kind of caliber player and recognizing what she brings to the game as well, because we can't have every single award won by Caitlin Clark. Even I think that's kind of egregious, because if that does happen, then the WNBA is only going to be about Caitlin Clark. And then once she retires, then there goes the WNBA and its profits. So we have to spread the awareness, and we have to spread the understanding that there are other WNBA athletes in the WNBA that legitimately play well and can play well and play just as good as Caitlyn, if not even better than Caitlyn. And A'ja is definitely one of them. Diana, completely different conversation. In fact, I hope Caitlyn completely erases her from the history of the WNBA. But that's a different conversation for a completely different time. And I just personally, I'm not a big fan of Diana. I do not like the way that I do not like her jealousy. I do not like how it's impacting Caitlyn, and how a lot of people aren't really liking Caitlyn in the WNBA because of her actions and what she started. And I'm not a follower for that. Not to mention, there's also speculation. This is just speculation. It's not official, it's not confirmed, that Diana did not want Caitlyn on the team because she did not want Caitlyn to win as many gold medals as her. That's just speculation, and it's literally just speculation, just drawn off of the comments that Diana has said about Caitlyn and things like that. Because when Diana was a rookie in the WNBA, she was on the Olympic team, and her longevity has allowed her to win several gold medals, and the most gold medals in the entire program's history. Why she didn't want that to happen to Caitlin Clark is, again, it's like, it's speculation, so we have no idea if that's actually like her motive. But if that really was her motive for keeping her off the team, oh my God, where do I even begin? It's like, why? But that's a completely different story for a completely different time. Unanimous Rookie of the Year completely outplayed Diana throughout the entire year. We'll see if that's going to happen in the postseason. And speaking of the postseason, I'm going to go ahead and go into the second segment where I update all of you guys on what's going on in the WNBA playoffs, because I guarantee you none of you guys know. And I'll explain why I have that opinion and why I feel like nobody knows what happened right after this short break. So I will be right back.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we are going to be talking about the WNBA postseason. It happened over this weekend, so I'm just going to give my opinions on that, and I'll give a recap of exactly what went down and what happened. But before I begin, I would like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether you guys have a hot take or a burning question or something that you've just been dying to say for the game. We are all ears, and if you really want your comment or question to get noticed, then you can go ahead and use Super Chat. You can just click on the $ below the chat box and send in your comments and donations that way, and your comments are guaranteed to get featured on the next show. If Super Chat isn't really your thing, that's totally fine. You can always use the link displayed below the ticker and in the description, gsmcpodcast.net, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. Either or really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. Again, the link for in displayed below the ticker is gsmcpodcast.net. And without further ado, let's go ahead and continue on with the second segment, which is talking about the WNBA postseason. Now, I said that a lot of you probably had no idea what even went down during the postseason, and I'll tell you why I said that. The WNBA games started at the exact same time that the NFL games were going on. Now, let's do a poll, guys. How many of you guys tuned into the first WNBA postseason game? Exactly. Because at 1 o'clock, my New York Giants were playing. And I'm sorry to say this, I am a very big supporter of women's sports. I pedal it to the absolute most. You can ask anybody in this school. I really love supporting the women and their sports. But I did not tune into the WNBA playoffs as they were happening live. In fact, the only game that I legitimately tuned into for a bit was Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever against the Connecticut Sun. But the big reason why I even tuned into that game was because my Giants game already ended, and because I'm a fan of Caitlin, and Connecticut Sun actually play in the state where I go to school. So it's like, there's a lot of things that I like about the matchup. And even then, I didn't tune into it nearly as much as I wanted to tune into the Cowboys losing. Like, these games, they happened at the worst possible times. And I just cannot understand why the broadcast team decided to start their playoff games on a Sunday. Like, the NBA in the bubble could not compete with the NFL during the season when they were both playing. Like, the NBA Finals were going on, and more people were tuning in to the NFL regular season than they were in the finals. It was the least watched NBA Finals in the history of NBA Finals because of the NFL. And so, what makes the broadcast team think that if the NBA can't compete with the NFL, what makes them think that the WNBA can compete with the NFL? It just can't. It doesn't make any sense. And this is coming off arguably the best WNBA season ever since the WNBA was found. The best season, the most viewed season without a doubt. And they choose to start their games on Sunday when the NFL is playing. I cannot stand whoever thought that was a good idea. I think whoever thought that was a good idea should immediately be removed from their job, because it's like, what is that? You can't do that. No one was going to tune into those games. And I watched the highlights after the game, yes, and like after all the NFL games, but like, you're not getting the viewership that you need live. It just doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that? Like, on a Monday, I understand, like, starting on a Monday, like early in the morning before the NFL does its coverage, because you cannot compete with the NFL. You just can't. The viewership difference between the NBA and then the NFL, like, the NBA in the playoffs was drawing around 6 million viewers. The NFL was drawing 22 million viewers. Like, you can, and that was one game. There were multiple games going on that were drawing way more viewers than that singular NBA game that had playoff implications. It was just a regular season NFL game, and it was getting more views than a playoff NBA game. Like, what? You can't do that. But enough with my little rant about, like, the timing of these games, because thankfully somebody on the broadcast team realized, okay, this is not going to work, and there's no game happening today on Monday. Genius. There's going to be 2 games that are happening on Tuesday. Thank God, because, like, and thank whoever it is that you guys believe in, it doesn't matter, because that's when nobody is going to be watching these games, and they happen at 7:30 and 9:30. Thank you. Like, that is prime time on a day when there's no football and no NBA basketball going on. That's much more like it, and that's way more people are going to be tuning into this. I know for sure I'm going to be tuning into the WNBA playoffs when they're happening tomorrow. Like, because 7:30 the first game starts, and then the next game starts at 9:30. That is much more like it. On a Tuesday, perfect. Then the next game is going to happen on, the next series of games is going to happen on Wednesday, again, 7:30, 9:30. No problems there because there's no football there. Again, much more like it. And then Thursday is, the games aren't going to happen at, let's say, these games are only going to happen if necessary, because they're game 3s and it's a 3-game series. So if necessary, the games will happen on Thursday, and they're going to happen at 1 o'clock. That is way more like it, and that is not during a time when the NFL is doing its coverage. So who knows? Maybe I'll tune into the Liberty game, or if they even need a game 3, while my podcast is going on. That is much more like it. And then same thing applies for Friday. The games are going to start at 1 o'clock. Again, much more like it, and exactly what the WNBA needs to do if they want to maintain their viewership. However, they still have the semifinal games happening on a Sunday. Why? Why do you want your games to happen on a Sunday? You're not going to get any kind of viewership. It doesn't make any sense. Please, I beg of the WNBA to change that schedule, because they're not helping themselves at all. They are not. They genuinely are not. They cannot compete with the NFL. Period. End of story. But anyways, let me actually talk about the results of these first games. So, right now, in the bracket, the Liberty have beat the Dream. Surprise. They won 83-69, and now they hold a 1-game series lead, and now they look to finish the game on Wednesday, I believe. Yes, they look to finish the series tomorrow, actually, and close out in 2 games and sweep them, 2 games besides the series. That's all you got to really win. It's like a play-in. It's like a play-in tournament, the first round, essentially. Then the Fever got blown out by the Connecticut Sun. More on that game later. And so now Fever, they have to hope to win back-to-back games in order to actually even have a chance of advancing into the next round. The Phoenix Mercury, they lost to the Minnesota Lynx 95-102. And again, I'll update the box scores as well. I'm just giving the series update. So the Lynx lead 1-0, and the Aces ended up beating the Seattle Storm in the first game of the matchup. So essentially, all of the top-seeded teams ended up winning in the first game. And really, it was no competition for a majority of these games. And I mean, which makes the viewership even worse, because if the games aren't necessarily that competitive, people are going to tune into football a little bit more than they're going to tune into a game where one team is up by 20 and then the other team is like losing badly and playing really badly. I mean, that's exactly what happened when I tuned into the Fever game, because the Fever game, they were down by 20 by the time I tuned in, and I was like, all right, well, this game is boring. This game is essentially over. And then I tuned it right back to the NFL. So this isn't really this is not helping. It's really not helping the WNBA at all. But more so on the box scores of this game. So, and all these games, excuse me. The Liberty, they ended up, the best player for the Liberty was The best player for the Liberty was obviously Brianna Stewart. She ended the game with 20 points and 11 rebounds. Sabrina Ionescu didn't really have a dominant game like how I expected. However, 17 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists is still rather impressive. And shooting 5 for 11 from the field is also pretty impressive as well. And a surprise standout for the Liberty in this game was Leonie Fibic. Forgive me if I messed up that last name, but she averaged 6 points per game throughout the WNBA season. And out of nowhere in this playoff games, drops 21 points, shoots 7 of 8 from the field, and 4 for 4 from 3. Fantastic game coming in from the Liberty. And the Liberty are just an overall better team than the Atlanta Dream, obviously, because, I mean, they are the 1 seed going up against the 8th seed. It only makes sense that the Liberty is going to... I have a feeling that the Liberty are going to sweep this series. But again, it only makes sense that the Liberty end up winning this game. And the Dream, I believe they are one of the few teams in this entire playoffs that has a losing record. Like, their record in the regular season was 15-25. So that goes to show you just how their season progressed. And actually, no, the Mercury have a losing record as well. So I wonder what happened to Diana over there. But speaking of which, yeah, we'll go ahead and cover that game next. So the Mercury, they ended up losing 95-102 to the Lynx. The Lynx are a fantastic team. And Natasha Cloud, out of nowhere for the Mercury, ended up dropping 33 points and 10 assists. But it just wasn't enough for the Lynx and their defense, and as well as another player on their offense that performed phenomenally well in the postseason. The Nafisha Collier, forgive me if I messed up that last name, ended up dropping 38 points, 4 assists, and 6 rebounds for the Minnesota Lynx. And Kayla McBride ended up dropping 20 points, 4 assists, and 3 rebounds for the Lynx as well, propelling them into a huge win. Collier shot a lot of free throws as well, ended up draining 13 for 14 of her free throws. But on the Mercury side, as I mentioned before, Cloud, she played phenomenally well. Brittany Griner was a little bit of a no-show for a majority of this game, ended up scoring 10 points and getting 6 rebounds. Again, I don't know what all that is about. Shot 3 for 10 from the field, looking a little bit like Angel Reese missing those layups, apparently. Jokes aside. And Diana Taurasi ended the game with 21 points, 2 assists, and 2 rebounds, and shot 8 for 16 from the field, so 50% overall, and 5 for 10 from the 3. Not a bad game, but again, not enough to propel them to a win, and they suffered the loss. The Fever... Now, this one, I don't know if you want to count this as a shocking game. I mean, I didn't really think it was that shocking because this was the first ever playoff game that Caitlin Clark has ever played in. Of course, she's going to struggle. That being said, she ended the game with 11 points and ended up going 4 for 17 from the field, 2 for 13 from 3. That is pretty bad. That is actually really bad, and especially to her expectations. But this one WNBA player that I do want to bring to attention, Dawana Boner, forgive me if I messed up that last name. I don't know if it's Bonner or Boner, whichever it is. She held Caitlin Clark to 0 for 7 from the field, and literally, like, completely locked her up every single time that she was the primary defender for Caitlin. So Caitlin's going to have to figure out a way to work around that in the postseason, and she's also going to have to figure out the postseason. But overall, the Fever did not play well. It makes total sense because this entire franchise has not made the playoffs since Caitlin Clark has been drafted. And, like, since before Caitlin Clark has been drafted, it took them 8 years. So it makes total sense how this roster and this team is not used to being in the postseason. This happened with Charles Barkley when he was on Phoenix. Like, a lot of people remember him for playing really bad in Game 1, but he says that everybody was nervous. It was the first ever playoff game that the team actually played. So it makes total sense. Like, you don't know how to handle the nerves. It makes total sense. And the Sun, they played pretty well as a team, and Boner was the leading scorer, ended the game with 22 points, while also simultaneously locking up Caitlin Clark. Very good ball right there. And there was also Marina Mabrey coming off of the bench, surprisingly, scoring 27 points, shot 9 for 20 from the field, but still 27 points is fantastic. And now, the final game, that since we are running out of time, the Aces ended up going against the Storm. This is arguably the more even matchup because, you know, they're the 4th and the 5th seed. Their records are roughly the same, only a difference in 2 games. And, I mean, they're talented. Both teams are rather talented. However, the Aces ended up coming out on top with this one thanks to A'ja Wilson, the unanimous MVP, dropping 21 points, 8 rebounds, and 2 assists, and also accumulating 5 blocks, which is another thing that's rather underrated about her game. They also had help from Tiffany Hayes coming off the bench, scoring 20 points, getting 5 steals, 4 rebounds, and 1 assist as well. Just an overall great game coming in from the Aces. And the Storm, they did not have a 20-point per game scorer, and they did not really, their leading scorers did not shoot very efficiently from the field. So maybe it's also a nervous thing. I mean, the best player on their team with the most points ended up going 5 for 15, then the one below that, 6 for 15, then 6 for 17, then Jordan Horston ended up going 3 for 4, which was pretty good. But then we go back to mediocrity. Mercedes Russell ended up going 3 for 7. Lloyd ended up going 2 for 8. 0 for 1, 0 for 1 coming in from the rest of the guards and the forwards. And you guys can understand why they ended up losing the game. Just inefficient shooting overall from the team. So that's the first round of the postseason wrapped up. The next elimination games are going to happen during the week on Tuesday and Wednesday for those of you guys that want to tune into those games. And then the next round, again, I have a problem with it, and I'm going to be screaming at it from the mountaintops until the end of time. The WNBA games should not go on when the NFL games are going on. I'm not going to stop saying that. Let me know in the comments what you guys think of that. But at the end of the day, we do have to go to a short break, and so I will be going into the third segment where I list off all of the WNBA award winners because, you know, I have to pay respect for all the WNBA players. So I will be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we are going to be listing all of the WNBA award winners. And everyone that has won an award is going to get recognized because, again, a lot of people probably didn't even pay attention to that because of the NFL season. And again, I say this time and time again, you have to reveal the news. You have to do it at a time when there is no college football going on and when there is no NFL football going on. Just avoid the weekends entirely. Avoid them. Completely avoid them because the biggest talk is going to be about football. And because of that, no one is going to be aware of who wins the awards. In fact, it took me around 10 minutes to be able to find the award winners for each and every single one of the WNBA awards, and that should not be the case. It should be something as simple as a Google search, and like this, quick and simple. And it wasn't. It was a pain. It took a while because a lot of people were writing about football. Like you can't do that. And a lot of people are going to pay more attention to football than they are to the WNBA. It's just not fair for these WNBA athletes. And I despise making these games on a Sunday. Completely despise it. Now, anyways, without further ado, let's continue with the awards. So, as I mentioned before, Aja won the MVP. Caitlin won the Rookie of the Year award. They won it unanimously, and there's no questions about that. So, not going to talk about those awards. I'm more so going to talk about the other awards that the WNBA has, similar to how the NBA has other awards, All-NBA First Team, All-NBA Second Team, All-NBA Rookie Team, All-NBA Defensive, all of those kinds of accolades as well. And Most Improved, Sixth Man of the Year, Sixth Woman of the Year, I guess is the term, and all of that. So, again, the MVP and the Rookie of the Year were an easy decision and a unanimous decision, so I'm not going to talk about that, and I already talked about that. So, let's go over the All-Rookie team. Now, obviously, Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese are both on the All-Rookie team, no questions about that. Camila Cardoso for the Chicago Sky ends up being on the All-Rookie team as well. Aaliyah Edwards for the Washington Mystics ends up being on the All-Rookie team as well. And Rickea Jackson for the LA Sparks ends up being on the All-Rookie team. Now, I really, really wish that it was Cameron Brink, but unfortunately she ended up coming down with a big injury. Maybe she'll make the All-Rookie team next season when she actually plays like a full rookie year and she actually plays in next season. I have no idea if they're even going to count Cameron Brink. And given the fact that she technically played a little bit of games, but then she tore her ACL. So I have no idea if they're even going to count that as a rookie season, but we'll go ahead and see how it progresses and how it goes on. Next is it's actually called for the WNBA, the Sixth Player of the Year, so it's not even Sixth Woman of the Year, which is, whatever you want to, I think it should have been called Sixth Woman. It would have been a nice play on words, but the player that ends up winning Sixth Woman of the Year, Sixth Player of the Year is Leonie Fibich for the New York Liberty. She is a 24-year-old rookie who was the glue that kept the Liberty together throughout the entire season. Now, at the beginning of the year, she didn't really play that many shifts, but as the season ended, she was well in the rotation, logging in 20-plus minutes and became a very important part to their rotation. She averaged 6.7 points, 3 rebounds, 1.8 assists per game. And again, it doesn't really tell the entire story of her versatility. She was able to carry more of a load during stretches where Courtney Vandersloot and Bentinija Laney missed action. Thanks to her play and her ability to adjust to what the Liberty needs and her versatility, the team won a franchise-tying 32 games, and they're the top seed in the league. Tiffany Hayes was also deserving of the award as well, but it did go to Fabich based on her ability to impact winning, and that's ultimately the most important thing in terms of accolades, just winning. You have to provide wins, and this makes her the ideal player for this award. You just got to provide wins, and you have to impact winning in some way. Next is the most improved player, and the most improved player goes to Derica Hamby for the LA Sparks. Now, when you look at her role from before, the previous year before, a lot of people don't actually know who this is, honestly. And, before, it wasn't like she was producing all that much. But now in this season, her production, her points, they almost doubled. And she also was able to increase her rebounding total, her assist total, as well as her steals total. And she went from a starter to the number one option and excelled in that role, being the most consistent player for the Sparks, especially when they desperately needed her to, because again, Cameron Brink ended up going down with an injury. Huge fan of Cameron Brink, by the way. DeJounte Carrington, she was also in the running for this award. The difference is that people expected her to be this good. No one really expected Derek Hamby to be this good. And her per 36 numbers actually took a slight decrease in production compared to last year. While Hamby's performance was completely unexpected, and the numbers that she put up are, well worth the award as well. So it's like, you would rather go for the player that doesn't have that much expectations when winning most improved, as opposed to someone who has the expectations and still improved, right? So if I can put this in NBA terms, maybe, let's say the award, let's say Victor Wembanyama is in the running for most improved, because I'm pretty sure he would be in the running for most improved. And then out of nowhere, completely out of the blue, Tyler Hero just explodes and just averages 28 points per game or something like that. Just a completely random player that no one really expects to drop that many points. I just thought of it, Tyler Hero right there. That sort of is the example, because Tyler Hero, no one expects, come on. You guys don't really expect Tyler Hero to average 28 or to nearly 30 points per game, right? 20, sure. 17 to 20, yes, we totally expect that. But 28 to almost 30? No one expects that from Tyler Hero. But a lot of people expect Victor Wembanyama to make that big leap and to make that jump going into next season, given off of what he did and what he's producing last season in his rookie year. So everybody sort of expects Victor to make that leap. No one expects someone like Tyler Hero to make that leap. And so just to name a player, that's sort of the example that I can give, and sort of why they ended up going with her why they ended up going with Derek Hamby for the Sparks as opposed to Carrington. Now, next award is the Defensive Player of the Year, and that's going to Nafisa Collier for the Minnesota Lynx. And similar to the MVP, it was between Collier and A'ja Wilson, but this time it went to Collier as opposed to Wilson. And A'ja Wilson, she gets a lot of blocks, as I alluded to before, but mainly, for Collier, in Collier's game, she was very, very valuable on the defensive side of the ball, and it resulted into way more wins. And the Lynx, they completely overachieved this year and won 30 games, which is also why, the coach of the year is, surprise, surprise, the Lynx. More on that later. And what Collier does as a defender, what she's been doing as a defender, it's been swept a little bit under the radar because it's Minnesota, and I'm sorry to say this, but Minnesota, before Anthony Edwards just exploded in the postseason, they were not getting any kind of recognition. Makes total sense why the WNBA team isn't getting that much recognition, but they do have a very solid team, and they could end up winning the WNBA championship, which would in turn give them way more clout and way more relevance in the WNBA, and way more stature in there as well. So, again, her value on the defensive end, completely unreal, and they decided to go with someone who actually had legitimate value as opposed to somebody that had the bigger name in this instance. And as I said before, the Minnesota Lynx, they also have the Coach of the Year, and that goes to Cherelle Reeve. And obviously, nobody expected the Lynx to be the number 2 seed, and it was all because of this coach right here. And a lot of people considered Sandy Brondello for the award as well, given that she's replicated another historic season for the Liberty. But Reeve has done what nobody expected to do, and that is bring Minnesota to the playoffs. And therefore, you have to have her on the team. You have to have her as the Coach of the Year. Now we move on to the All-WNBA team. So now we have All-WNBA first team. Nafisa Collier, again, the aforementioned Nafisa Collier. She makes the first team. Sabrina Ionescu and Brenna Stewart, of course, they make the first team. Alyssa Thomas for the Connecticut Sun also makes the first team. And, of course, the MVP, A'ja Wilson, makes the first team. The second team, Caitlin Clark makes the second team for the Indiana Fever. Kayla Copper from the Phoenix Mercury makes the second team. Jonquel Jones for the Liberty also makes the second team. Arike Ogunbowale for the Wings, forgive me if I messed up that last name, makes the second team. And Nika Mike, forgive me if I messed up that last name again, for the Seattle Storm makes the second team. Now, I believe that Caitlin is the only WNBA rookie player that is on an all WNBA team. I could be wrong about that, but I think that's where she stands in this. And a lot of people are going to be rather surprised and things like that. But like this is sort of what I expect coming in from this list. And now let's go ahead and continue. The all defensive first teams is going to Natasha Cloud for the Phoenix Mercury, Nafisa Collier, Brenna Stewart, Alyssa Thomas, and Aja Wilson for the Aces. And obviously Aja Wilson's going to make the all defensive first team. It makes total sense because, her blocks and her block totals and the blocks that she averages is just unreal. And for second team, Dewana Boner, Dejani Carrington for both the Connecticut Sun is also on the second team. In fact, there's actually 3 players on the Connecticut Sun that have made the all defensive teams right here, according to this article here. And this is all, I'm 90% sure that a lot of these are just predictions and not official as of right now, because they're still subject to change. But I do mostly agree with this list. And again, Jonquel Jones for the Liberty ends up making the second team. Ezzie McBeggar ends up making the second team as well for the Storm, and Alana Smith for the Minnesota Lynx ends up making the second team as well. And again, it's just going off of what they've done in the season and what I've seen from them in the games that I've tuned into. And going into the postseason, it makes total sense why the Liberty are going to struggle in scoring, because there's 3 players that are on the Connecticut Sun that they have to go up against, and 3 of those players are phenomenal defenders. So it makes total sense as to why the struggle is sort of happening for this team. And that's all that I have for the awards, and that's really it. And again, it's this is arguably the most generational season this is the most popular season in the entire WNBA history. And this list was composed by a person named Edwin Garcia. So this is sort of where I got all the answers to this is where I got sort of all the players and where they listed. And not only that, but I also tuned into a lot of these games. And I agree with the majority of where I would put these players. And again, I really wish I could have put Cameron Brink on the all-rookie team. But again, that injury is really just hinders her. Now, with that out of the way, with all the WNBA awards out of the way, we can go right ahead and go into the 4th segment where I talk about Jayson Tatum and his comments about how he knew he was going to win the NBA Finals. Again, this is completely new. I did not expect to read this, and I did not expect to see this headline over this weekend, and I'm actually really curious as exactly what's going to be going on. And, I'm really curious to see, how this, what Jayson Tatum exactly had to say. Because I didn't read the article yet. So we're all going to read it together in this 4th segment right after the short break. So be sure to tune in if you guys are interested to Tatum's comments about how he knew he was going to win the championship. So I will be right back.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the 4th segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this 4th segment, we are going to be looking at Jayson Tatum and his comments about how he knew that he was going to win the NBA Finals last season. Now, the internet had a lot to say, according to this article, and I'm just going to go ahead and go over that. But before I do want to point out that the awards that I just mentioned previously in the last segment for the WNBA, that was all very, very true. And I found another website called Across the Timeline, and it shows all the award winners for each and every single category, and all the players that I just listed are on this list as well for the categories that they all listed. So definitely, so all of this is very, very true. And Caitlin Clark apparently made the AP All WNBA first team, which is very, very surprising. And she was also on the WNBA rookie team as well. So little differences here and there, but the Defensive Player of the Year award was the same, I believe, and the Comeback Player of the Year award was actually for the Seattle Storm Skylar Diggins. So just a little bit of amendments over there. You can see all of the awards on Across the Timeline, and that was what I was reading was an article of someone in his own opinions, and legitimately opinions that I agreed on. So just clearing all of that up before I get into this next segment, talking about Jayson Tatum and his comments about the postseason. Now I have two articles lined up. So I'm going to look at the one where the headline is "The entire internet had tons of nasty jokes about Jayson Tatum after the Celtics superstar revealed when he knew his team would win the championship." So this article continues. In the 2024 NBA playoffs, the Boston Celtics, hold on just one second. The Boston Celtics won their 18th championship title. Faced off against the Mavericks, secured the win, finishing the series 4-1. Jaylen Brown stood out during the entire series and was named the Finals MVP. With the win, the Celtics hold the record for the most championships in NBA history. Interestingly, however, Jayson Tatum of the Celtics knew that they would win before the finals even began. Now, very surprising. At a recent event at the Maynard Fine Arts Theater, Tatum expressed confidence that the Celtics would win after the Denver Nuggets lost in the playoffs. So, this is a quote coming in from Jayson Tatum. "People always ask me, when did you guys know you were going to win the championship?" Tatum said, according to Gary Washburn of the Boston Globe, "When Minnesota beat Denver, I felt like Denver was the only team that they matched up best with us. I thought that we were going to play Denver in the finals, and it was going to be a good one." And those were the comments that Jayson Tatum said. So it seems like he did not have all that much faith in the Dallas Mavericks or Luka Doncic or Kyrie Irving actually beating them in the postseason. So they went into this postseason with extreme confidence, expecting a win. And I mean, they ended up doing it. So I can't really say much about that, but many saw the Nuggets as one of Boston's toughest rivals, as they had beaten the Celtics twice in the regular season. With Denver out of the playoffs, Jayson Tatum felt more confident about their chances. And a lot of fans had a lot of things to react about this. Many people have started to bash Jayson Tatum after his recent comments, with one person saying, "When Jimmy Butler got hurt in the play-in and when Wolves beat Denver should have been the answer." And I guess, that's a lot of Miami Heat fans just saying that, the Heat would have most likely beaten the Boston Celtics had they had a healthy Jayson Tatum. And TJ in the chat, he's saying, "Tatum is speaking facts. Jokic was the only real mismatch for the Celtics this season." And I really do not want to agree with him on that, but sadly, I do have to agree with him on that because, yes, I do think that there was a chance that Miami Heat would have made the series way more competitive had Jimmy Butler had been on the roster and had he had been healthy. And, of course, TJ is in the chat saying the Heat weren't going to do anything that year. And, again, we don't know. We don't expect the Miami Heat to do anything in any year, but all of a sudden they do. They're just the ultimate underdogs. Now, it's a very, very big what if. Because saying that the number 8 seed was going to beat the number 1 seed is ludicrous in any playoff series that you come across. And the reality is that we will never know. just how good the Heat would have been against the Boston Celtics had they had Jimmy Butler. But they did, and they were able to win Game 1 without Jimmy Butler. They got gentlemen swept directly after that, so, that doesn't really matter in the slightest. I totally understand that. But again, we don't know. But to TJ's point, yes, the Nuggets were easily the most difficult matchup that the Celtics would have to worry about. Jamal Murray is one thing. Like, he will most likely get handled out on the perimeter with Jaylen Brown or whoever, or Drew Holiday or Derek White, or whichever perimeter defender decides to guard Jamal Murray at that point. Jamal Murray tends to only play well against the Lakers anyway, so we have no idea how much of a factor he would have been in. The biggest scare was Jokic. Obviously, the biggest scare when you go up against the Denver Nuggets is going to be Nikola Jokic, the MVP of the entire league, has been the MVP except for 1 year where he should have won the MVP that year, but ultimately ended up winning the championship. And again, Nikola Jokic, the matchup would have been deadly against the Boston Celtics, because not entirely sure how you feel about Kristaps directly coming off of an injury and then needing to play Jokic in the postseason. That is a lot to ask. And asking someone to guard Jokic is a lot to ask in of itself. Coming off of an injury, even more to ask. Not to mention Al Horford being the oldest player in the entire NBA, him coming off the bench, he would also have to match up against Jokic. And Jokic, that is barbecue chicken. You cannot tell me that Al Horford on Jokic isn't barbecue chicken. That is, what Shaq says, barbecue chicken alert. That is barbecue chicken. He is getting absolutely cooked on every single play. But aside from barbecue chicken, because that's honestly making me very hungry, the Celtics, they were just the better team. There was really no team aside from Denver that can actually and legitimately compete against them. I mean, the Dallas Mavericks, their threat is on the perimeter. They have a lot of perimeter defenders. Most teams that rely on perimeter play are going to have a problem when going up against the Boston Celtics because of just how good they are at guarding on ball and playing defense. Drew Holiday, Derek White, all defensive second teams, I believe. And Jaylen Brown, he wasn't picked for a defensive second team, but he's a great defender, not to mention the stuff that he brings on offense. Same thing with Tatum. Tatum's a rather versatile defender. Steve Kerr might not agree with you on that, but Steve Kerr is wrong. And most of the centers, they're very tall and they're very disruptive. Again, Jokic, I have a feeling that Jokic is just going to completely barbecue chicken Kristaps Porzingis. But again, he didn't really do that well against Rudy Gobert, Rudy Gobert is the defensive player of the year. So, I mean, there is a reason why he didn't really play all that well. But I was very shocked that they ended up blowing that game the way that they blew that game, and that they couldn't close out, because they were a team that was really known for closing out, and that was the big difference this year with the Celtics, that they were actually legitimately able to close out, and they were able to be a closeout team. So, not really, honestly, voice crack of the century right there. Honestly, I'm very, very surprised. I don't think Tatum should have said this, obviously, because, you never know that you're definitely going to win. You never know that in the postseason. But I do agree with the statement of him saying that the Nuggets were easily the most difficult matchup that they had to worry about. I have no problems with that whatsoever. This is just the internet making fun of Jayson Tatum because Jayson Tatum is Jayson Tatum. That's essentially what this is. Jayson Tatum is going to get a lot of hate from a lot of different fans, whether it be Miami Heat fans, whether it be Laker fans, whether it be Kobe fans, anything like that. Jayson Tatum is going to get hate. So that's all that I really have for the fourth segment. Again, not really much to say on the comments. Let me know in the comments what you think of what he had to say. Because me personally, I agree with it. I mean, I agree with most of it. So now we're going to go ahead and go into the fifth segment. This is going to be a much shorter fifth segment than usual because 1, I'm rather hungry. 2, we are running out of time. And 3, this is going to be about a jersey retirement. Yes, Vince Carter, half man, half amazing. He is going to get his jersey retired by not 1, 2 franchises. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the fifth segment real quick, right after this short break. And we are back with the fifth and the final segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this final segment, we are going to be talking about the one and only Vince Carter. Again, the half man, half amazing. That was one of the nicknames that he was giving. Again, Air Canada, amongst several other nicknames that he was given. He is by far one of the NBA's best dunkers, one of the NBA's best players, not really in GOAT conversation, sure, but in terms of just raw athletic ability and raw talent, Vince Carter, half man, half amazing, was just that guy. He was that dunker. In fact, he's considered by a lot of people to be the best dunker in the history of basketball, period. He jumped over a 7-footer. He has so many 360 dunks that he does in game. He's won dunk contests before. His cousin, Tracy McGrady, was also in the NBA. They're just an athletic bunch. They're just an athletic duo. They're fantastic. He was great on the Raptors. He was also great on the Nets. And that is exactly where both of his jerseys are being retired. He's going to be retired as a Toronto Raptor, and he's going to be retired as a New Jersey/Brooklyn Net. And he's going to be the first ever Raptors player with a jersey retired for the franchise. And, again, I'm honestly very surprised that the Raptors decided to retire his jersey. Now, I know a lot of you guys are probably going to be like, you're surprised after saying that his name is literally half man, half amazing, and let me explain why. Vince Carter, when he was on the Raptors, he was phenomenal. I'll go ahead and I'll pull up his averages right now and I'll read them off. Vince Carter, when he was on the Raptors, he was like a 27 point per game scorer. I remember he had that season as well. And I'm only going to talk about, his prime. I do know that he's had the longest NBA career. He's the only NBA player that has played in 4 decades of NBA basketball, played in the 90s, played in the 2000s, played in the 2010s, and then played in the 2020s as well. He just an old man, essentially, the old man of the NBA at the time. But when he was on the Raptors, he was an all-star in almost every single year. He averaged, the highest points per game that he averaged was 27 for the Toronto Raptors. The one big bugaboo that he had was really the postseason. He wasn't really all that much of a performer in the postseason. And, yes, he would make it to the postseason, but most of the time he would only make it as far as the second round. And with the Raptors, go figure, he would barely make the postseason with the Raptors because they weren't really all that good of a team. However, he was still a phenomenal scorer. Now, the big reason why I said that I'm very surprised that Toronto is retiring his jersey is because of the drama that went down with the Raptors. Now, I don't know the exact stories and exactly what happened, but I do know that Vince Carter, there was one point where Vince Carter did not want to play with Toronto anymore. And he wanted to get traded to the Nets. He wanted to go to New Jersey. For whatever reason it might be, he did want to go to New Jersey and play for the Nets. However, Toronto wasn't having that. Toronto wasn't going to trade him. So, out of nowhere, he just decides to reduce his production a little bit. So, in 2003, he averaged 20 points per game, which isn't bad, but way below his usual averages. And then in the next season, he averaged 22 and then 24. But then in 2005, for 20 games with the Raptors, he averaged 15 points per game. Just out of nowhere, he just plummeted, right? Now, he played really, really bad in this season. And this was sort of the sort of final push that he needed, that he gave the Raptors to trade him, okay? Immediately, once he gets traded to New Jersey, all of a sudden, he remembers how to play basketball again and averages 27 points per game. I am not making this up. You can look at it on the box scores. There was, in the 2004-2005 season, he played 20 games for the Toronto Raptors. And in those 20 games, he averaged 15 points. The second he goes over to New Jersey, he averages 27 points per game and continues with his scoring production for the next 3 years. And it's like he wanted to get traded. And he wanted out of Toronto. And I'm honestly very surprised that they still went through with retiring his jersey after doing that, because that's essentially drama. Like, that is drama. Whether you want to, there was definitely drama going on in that season. I was only a baby when that season happened, so I don't really remember it all that well, obviously, but I know for a fact there was definitely drama brewing in that system and with that team and how it was going about. Because, I mean, from averaging 15 points per game to 27 points per game, he was deliberately throwing matches. And what's even crazier to me is the jump in 3-point percentage. Because aside from being an amazing dunker, Vince Carter was a phenomenal shooter as well. When he was on Toronto, he shot 32% from 3. But then once he goes over to New Jersey, he shoots 42% from 3. That is a huge jump in efficiency. That is a 10% gap in efficiency from 3-point shooting alone. And in the field goal, in terms of the field goal percentage, he went from 41 to 46, which is also very impressive. And also, the free throw shooting, surprisingly, he shot 69% from the free throw line when he was on Toronto in the final year. Then once he goes to New Jersey, he shoots 81% from the line. And I'm just like, what? What was that? Out of nowhere. So I'm very surprised, but props to Toronto for actually wanting to retire and remember his career on the Raptors. And that's sort of like the majority, like that's sort of mainly what I wanted to talk about, just how surprised I was at this man being retired. I knew he was going to get his jersey retired for the Nets, no question about it. But for the Raptors, I was just way more surprised. And I wanted to just give my reasoning as to why that was. So I hope you guys enjoyed that segment, and I hope you guys are Vince Carter fans. I know I'm a Vince Carter fan. I like seeing his dunks at the time, and I know he was rather old. He also had some pretty good plays on the Dallas Mavericks. He did hit that one game winner if you look at his career highlights. So that's all that I have on the fifth segment. That's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning into the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. As usual, we love hearing what you guys have to say during the show. Whether you have a hot take or a burning question, we are all ears. If you really want your comment or question to get noticed, you can use Super Chat or use the link displayed below the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net. Send in your comments that way. Either or is going to be guaranteed to get mentioned on the show next time. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am your host, Nelson. I hope you guys enjoy football later tonight. Remember, tune into the podcast and tune into the football podcast. Also, tune into the WNBA games that are going to happen tomorrow and on Wednesday. And I am your host, Nelson. I am extremely hungry. And as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.